Okay, now Fra Anil is going to speak. We can turn this to.
Okay, can begin.
Okay.
I can read the short slide when it's.
Yeah, sure. I won't be long.
All right.
Thank you, Roberto, and Father Joseph, and especially Ajahn Surat, who invited me to this distinguished gathering of the group called Bioethics, UNESCO Bioethics. Well, thank you for Professor Ellen, who has already tilled the ground for me, so I don't have to go and go around and talking about the Buddhism in a way. So my main topic, what I'm dealing with in these 15 minutes is that right? So my main topic, which I'm trying to deal with in 15 minutes, is that trying to talk about these three different topics, that is interbeing, eco-dharma, and eco-sattva. By explaining these three words, I guess that is a new logos, a new words, I will able to at least show you that how Buddhism really look at the bioethics in this modern world. So Buddhism, when you talk about Buddhism, it is one of the, we can call it religion, but I myself don't call it religion myself. I never regard Buddhism as a religion, because in idea of religion in English is very narrow, very straightforward. It has to be something to do with relations with the Supreme God. But whereas in Buddhism, it is all about Buddha means that awakening. It is about your cognitivity awareness. It is about how do you develop your life to be more well-being and happiness in here and now. It is nothing to do with God. It is nothing to do with others else, which is we're not able to communicate with our direct way of communication. So this is all about how do we live in this world that is with nature, between the biosphere, biodiversity, and also the human diversity. So this is what I see as a Buddhist. So when we look at a lot of this teaching of the Buddha, whole idea of a Buddhism is called, sometimes it's called 84,000 teachings. So out of these 84,000 teachings, if we look at this, analyze and see it, it is all about how do you live here and now, harmoniously with the nature, harmoniously with the environment, harmoniously with all the sentient beings, not only us, so all the animal creatures. So whole idea is here, we are talking about the human rights, animal rights, as well as nature's right. That is what all Buddhism all about, honoring and respecting each other. But it doesn't mean that, Professor Allen just mentioned that thou shalt not. In Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, we don't have that idea of a thou shalt not. The precept called 5 precepts, which is called Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami, which is in every Buddhist ritual, is started with this, asking for these 5 precepts. In this 5 precepts, it is not saying that thou shalt not. Samadhiyami, I will admit myself to the study of the lesson, pro and con of killing. So it is not saying that not kill. If it's not killed, there's a, how can you have a Buddhist country? You have a Buddhist country, you have a soldier there and guarding the country, and the other countries, military enemy attack, what he will do? Oh, I have just vow myself to the Buddhist monk that I will not kill. So let the enemy, just please welcome to my country. No, you can't do that, because you have to, if it is a kill it, but with a responsibility, with accountability, with your duty. Same as living in this like a luxury hotel. But I'm sure that in this luxury hotel, you have a lot of problem from nature, termites, for example. Like my residence in my temple, it is made of wood, which has been nearly 200 years old building, made of whole wood. And then the one thing is that I have to be very careful that no termites, come in to live with me harmoniously. So in a way that, so I will have that. So I won't say that, oh, termites, you are my good friend, come and live together in a loving kindness or whatever. It is not in that way. But as a monk, I am a monk in a samana, means that a peaceful one. Of course, as a monk, I'm not allowed to kill. But for a lay, you can do as you wish. It is a choice. It is a kind of volitional intention, volitional karma. So you are able to, I will just say that, oh, please, can you go and see what's going on there? I won't say that go and kill. So that, it depends on my assistant, lay assistant, whatever he do. So I just go there, I just turn my head away. So it is not a kind of a thou shall not. It is in the cause of that, because we have to live, each other. If we can drive them away, fine. But if you can drive them, you can't drive, you have to take certain measure. You are allowed to do, but not as a Buddhist monk, but as a lay. So this is the one thing. So another thing is Buddhism is that you have to look at all the thing in this world, not as a theodicy. The Rich Davis uses the word cosmodicy. So it means that all is cosmic law. It is all natural law. And the word actually dharma or dhamma, basically, which is the word religion, it actually means natural law by the etymological point of view. The dharma is dra, the word dra root, and it's a tner in Latin, which means actually sustaining. It is actually upholding. The whole idea is how you uphold yourself with this in this flow of impermanence and flow of insubstanceless. And this is a whole about the cosmodicy, and doesn't see it as a theodicy. So the Buddhist way is explaining these 5 laws called natural laws. So we have to accept that. Buddha says that there is a biosphere autonium. There's something we cannot control. The hurricane come, what can we do? We have just to accept. We can't go beyond and trying to fix that. We have to accept that. Biodiversity laws, also it's closely going to genetics. The thing is that when you plant a mango, you will receive the mango. But at this time, the natural law is able to change by the human invention in a way that you have genetic modification and so and so. But if the genetic modification is not creating any harm to the society as a whole, to the world as a whole, the Buddhism says that fine with that. It is your technology. So psychic law means that this is your, what is your intention of doing everything in your life, all the activities, whether it is harming, whether it is kind of really destructing your surroundings, because your surroundings is another way is yourself, because you become somebody because of your surroundings. The karmic law, again, is about karma, it is actions. So it is not about a past karma, about the future karma. It is not about rebirth. Karma is action and reactions. The way I'm speaking at the moment is kind of my volitional karma. And then my word got into your ears, and then I guess I don't know what is your reactions. You'll have a reaction. That is only all about the cause and effect. That is all about the idea of the karma in Buddhism, not Hindu karma, which is about the past karma or the Jain karma. Again, all those different karma. When the Buddhist karma is very simple. So the lastly is a Dhamma Niyama, is a natural law. It is a cause and effect. Everything looking at the causal. These are the 5 kind of a bioethic, I would say, that the Buddhism encourage people who want to practice yourself to be living harmoniously in this world. Therefore, I would say that all this global problem, what we are seeing at the moment, is mostly from not accepting the biosphere laws, not accepting the biodiversity laws, misunderstanding of natural laws, immoral action and behavior for your being a selfishness, and then lacking the knowledge of interrelationship, all things. And having said that in the relationships and all those things, it just, I think, give answers to what COP27 is coming, COP27 in November. They say that their goal and vision is that mitigation, adaptation, finance, collaboration. I will delete out the word finance. It's not about me, because my job is, my profession is that I just go for arms round every morning. So that is my my profession. So I don't care about the finance because I don't live with the money. But mitigation is one of the things that you want to understand how you mitigate all the damages you are creating yourself and the society. Adaptation, also how do you adapt to the new development of these natural laws. And collaboration is how do we work together to fill that. So these ideas, I guess that was taught us from the beginning of like my life. When I was a become monk, or the novice, when I was just 14, at the age of 14, I was taught that your lifestyle has changed. You are not sensual pleasure in life. All the lay people, householder is always indulge in sensual pleasure with your eyes, ear, and so on. But as a Buddhist monk, you have to live a life of sufficiency. And these are we are taught. So in terms of how do we live a sufficient livelihood? How do you live a recycling livelihood? How do you live an eco-being livelihood? And how do you self-sufficiency? As I told yesterday, this robe is made of the plastic waste. It's made of 15 plastic bottles, which was the waste. So this is how Buddhism look at the things. That is, again, I guess that Professor Allen has mentioned the dependent origination. We don't believe that it is not out of nothing. It has to be something, and then something will transform itself. This is the whole idea of interdependent, not independent. We are not independent at all. It's a cosmic law. So the knowledge of this dependent, I would say that's bring us toward interbeing. So we are not independent, we are interbeing, we are related to each other. So that's how I look at the world as a human. We are looking at related with the biosphere. We are human, as well we are a diversity. So everything in this world is substanceless, that's what Buddhism says. Self matter because there is surroundings, and as same as surroundings matter because you existed, yourself existed. Therefore, in one sheet of paper, you can see the whole thing. It is not only the paper. You can see the cloud, you can see a tree, you can see everything here if you are able to see the what he calls interbeing. So after having this idea of interbeing, you will see that the whole idea is become looking at the whole thing in an ecocentric way. It's not an egocentric way, become hierarchical, but it is everything a part and parcel of each other. This is the how Thai way of caring the nature. We have a way because the people cut the log of the trees. So in order to prevent that, we ordain the tree. So we put our unused ropes and tied it in a way that people will scare because this is a sacred tree immediately. We are using this local folk belief, but to change it to the more active way of caring the nature, or even some games of shooting the sheets into the forest. And this is another simple 2 minutes video.
Monks are making history, collecting empty plastic bottles and containers from tourists at the Buddhist temple of Wat Chat Teng in South
Actually, this is a colleague of mine.
The bottles are taken to a machine which squeezes them down into a giant bale of crushed plastic. It's then proceeded into synthetic fibers and made into fabric to create saffron-colored robes for the monks. The monks have crushed 40,000 kilograms of plastic since the program began 2 years ago.
This is about 5 years ago.
The aim is to carve plastic litter in the surrounding Chao Phraya River, which flows south to the Gulf of Thailand in the Western Pacific Ocean. Unlike most temples where people give monks gifts of food and clothes, devotees here ride bicycles offering plastic bottles in exchange for blessings. 15 plastic bottles makes one piece of robe.
This is the one piece.
A set of full monk attire requires 4 pieces of robe or 60 plastic bottles.
If you don't collect these plastics, where do they end up? In the stomachs of dolphins, whales, and many other sea animals. Then they die, so if we save these plastics, it means we are saving lives.
Many of the volunteers that contribute to the project are the less fortunate in life.
We have many volunteers, including jobless people and the disabled, who are helping with separating plastic bottles. We pay the volunteers as much as we can and give them an opportunity to work. So people who are jobless, disabled, earn a living.
So this is what we have been doing. It's not only the ideology, but we do in our daily practice. As for, since I think 2017, I have been involving in kind of activists in the green world. And then even I was chosen as a 100 guardian angel of the planet by the Planet Workshop in the UNESCO. This is when I was awarded the Guardian of the Planet award, Legend de la Planet. I don't know what this means. So I'm the legend, I guess. So these are the 6 awardees at the time who was awarded as the one who really active in kind of trying to protect the environment. So how do you do that? That is all eco-dharma. Dharma is whole idea of the Buddhist teaching. As I say, dharma basically means that upholding what? Upholding the natural law. So if you practice the dharma, basically means that you are upholding natural law. You are living harmoniously with nature. That is, again, come back to the word sustainable development, which I have a very big problem with that, because I see sustainable development as an oxymoron, because the development means changing and sustain means not change. But if you go back to the word in terms of etymology, I will say that development in balance. And that is exactly the same that when Buddha, after his enlightenment, he gave a first sermon. It was called Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Sometimes it's called the first sermon. But if you translate that first sermon into etymologically, which means that dharma is upholding, chakka means that moving forward, which is the development, and pavattana into practice. Basically, the Buddhist first sermon is about practice of moving forward, developing with the soul ground in balance. That is what I see as a sustainable development. And this is one of the piece I did kind of promote in Thailand I get the idea of the sustainable development and how Buddhism is, intervening and in trying to achieve the SDG by 2030. These are the SEP is the King's idea philosophy here, and these 8 I spoke. There's all the 8-fold noble path in Buddhism, which become right livelihood, right view, and all these right things. And this will really solve the problem of the sustainable development goal. After all, when you practice this both teaching all the natural law, you become a bodhisattva. You are regarded as one who is practicing the teaching of the Buddha. And David Roy just recently renamed it as should be called eco-sattva. It's meant that someone who lives harmoniously with natural law and by respecting the law and so on. So this is what I say, is that this is the word of the Buddha himself, that Dhammo have rakati dhammachari, Dhammo suchinno sukhang vahati. The nature protects one living by the natural law, and natural laws, well practiced, bring happiness. So if you want to be happy, please take care your part of yourself that is surroundings. Thank you.
Thank you, Friday. Now, Lilian, can you present your paper? Do you have a presentation or?
Yes.
Is it uploaded? Yeah. Okay. Those who have presentations, upload it beforehand so that you don't. Trying to upload it.
Yes, yes. Can you just check? Like this. So good morning, everyone. I'm well aware that I'm the fourth speaker and you might be a bit tired. I hope make this presentation in a fast way in
15 minutes.
exactly. You pressure me with the 5 minutes cast, 1 minute cast. And well, I need to say it was very easy to leave the metaphor proposed for this workshop. Reading your paper was like visiting a temple, an unknown temple. It actually made me remember the first time I visited a temple that was not from my religious tradition. I was a schoolgirl visiting a mosque in the south of Brazil. And this mixture of admiration for the building, the architecture, people praying in a different way, the symbols, and questions, no? For all the new things that I got to know. This is a picture of the outside part of the temple in the Grand Palace for the ones who were not here for this tour. Highly recommended. And I divide my presentation, my paper, in 3 parts. First one, the admiration. The first part of living this experience of getting to know a new temple. I divide this part in admiration of practices and admiration of ideas. Then questions about big themes and questions about concrete issues on the horizon. And convergences, okay? I think I will just have time for the first 2. So, I value very much the practices. I think the externalities are the first things we actually see. So it's very impressive to see the roles of a monk, all this idea of recycling. In your text, you said that the monk is suggested to wear robes made of rags collected from those heaps, preferably from cemeteries. It's quite striking. Then the practice of monasteries in forests and parks, this was the prototype. And then this idea of taking care of your home. And monastic codes preventing monks from destroying vegetation. And then the ideas, that I'm not going into them because it's just marvelous explaining it now, the ideas of dependent origination and interbeing, the idea of 5 laws in the unethical living or the unbalanced living of these 5 laws as the cause of global crisis, then the idea of sustainability in Dharma, and ecology as an essential part of your spiritual path. In your paper, in fact, you wonder if this ecological path, this way of living Buddhism, is the most important contribution that Buddhism can offer today. And I think this is a lovely idea. Then I'm going into the questions. Maybe you can see that. Well, yeah. Questions about responsibility. I'd like to understand better if we are all interconnected and we interact. Is that true that only human action is leading to ecological crisis? Or does Buddhism consider that other living beings, or perhaps any other form of being, also have duties to protect our common home? Are other beings free so to have responsibilities? In other words, could they live wrongly? Or is there a possibility only for humans? Can that be the case that we are all interconnected, but only human actions are accountable? Would Buddhist ideas such as original dependence and interbeing be in contradiction with what I call man's unique capacity of choice in responsibility for nature? And then about the value of life, in the ritual of ordination of a tree, you mentioned that the villagers make a vow to protect the trees as their own lives. And I just like to know if it's a symbol or if you actually mean that a human being is asked to sacrifice his life to protect the ordained tree. About the belief in rebirth and nibbana, I have a question with the matters of the sense of non-violence and then of non-renewable resources. Buddhist preaches compassion and no harm. But I would like to understand better, how does it explain to his followers the sense of avoiding harm in a framework where a being can be reborn in another form multiple times? I guess there is kind of bad karma for the one who kills, but is that an objective problem for the being who is killed? Why is it wrong to kill an animal if, after all, it will be reborn? Moreover, wouldn't it give it a chance of being reborn in a higher form? Then, considering the belief in rebirth, I'd like to understand better the perspective on the limitation of natural resources. Bioethical perspective of protecting the environment, I guess, imply the idea that we're living in a world with some non-renewable resources. Is the belief in rebirth compatible with slogans like, we have one world, one chance to save it? And considering Nibbana, the release of the cycle of rebirth, what's the sense of protection of nature? If someday all achieve Nibbana, what would happen to the world? I just put together the question of human intervention in the appropriate access and utilization of resources. The Article 17 of the Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights talk about this appropriate access and utilization of resources. In practice, how do you see what's appropriate? How do you see what's necessary? Do you differentiate between necessary and unnecessary, maybe disproportional harm? If so, what are the criteria? If no living being should be killed unnecessarily, how do you discern what's necessary? And for instance, here, we have this division today in the world. Some people think humans could be vegetarian, so they should be vegetarian and not kill animals. Others think that man is omnivorous, and that as it's not wrong for a lion to eat other animal, for example, man does not wrong in eating meat, as it has no less right to be part of the food chain. No? And then some also invoke other kind of needs, not only biological needs, but sociological needs. We have more than just biological needs. So what are your criteria to discern what is necessary? I'll skip the convergences and go straight to practical issues on the horizon. I will make my questions about 5. Sorry, I am also a practical person, colleague, so I need to get down a bit and see. Bioethics is struggling with these issues. We need to find answer for the impact that new technology are expected to do to the environment in the following years. So many of the things I'm going to talk today are not reading now, hearing now, but probably soon or in the next years. I'm using the horizon scanning of what is in the horizon for bioethics by the Non-Field Council on Bioethics in the UK. So what I'd like to know is if these options become viable, safe, available, it's an imagination exercise, a simulation, no? Would Buddhism look at them favorably or negatively? Would Buddhists sympathize with any of the following technologies, maybe for the good they could do for the environment, or reject them? We all have perspectives, no? The tour guide was telling us about one of your kings that took the first photograph, that let the first photograph be taken, and that people were scared that he could lose his spirit, that is the incarnation of some god, Brahma, I think. I'm not sure I got the idea right, but I do think our religions have perspectives and it affects the way you see new technologies. So the first one is this, meat alternatives. This was the first stem cell burger, so completely synthetic meat. It's not only GMO, but synthetic meat, presented in London in 2013. If it turns out to be safe and healthy for humans and less harming for the environment, would Buddhists approve it? Then the whole question about animal research. We know that animals are used in preclinical trials in early phase of research before moving into experimentation in humans. The number of animals used in research continues to increase, largely due to the use of genetically modified mice in primates. How does Buddhism see the way this research is evolving? Then gene drive, that was we talked about in the panel yesterday, the possibility of quickly alter and suppress a whole population has potential application in the control of disease vectors, such as mosquitoes. We know this is a simulation for the carrier of malaria. If it's released into the wild, organisms carrying the gene drives may be hard to contain. And if the technique has low efficiency, it could leave time for the species to evolve and develop resistance. Today we're using very less sophisticated ways to kill mosquitoes anyways in sub-Saharan Africa to avoid people to get malaria. So what's the Buddhist perspective? Genome editing farmed animals, researchers are exploring producing cattle without horns to prevent harm to other cattle and handlers, making pigs and chickens resistant to certain diseases, and making animals more productive and tolerant to heat. Are we helping animals by making them more resistant? Maybe more resilient and productive animals will diminish the number of used animals. How do you see this reality? And last, the extinction of animals. Now there is this project now to create a hybrid between the woolly mammoth and the Asian elephant. And if one day the extinction becomes possible, questions remain on how should the species be selected and the effects on today's ecosystems. How do you see this reality? Do you see it's a restoration of the natural order or maybe a correction of consequences of past human actions that cause the extinction of some species, or rather as an unacceptable intervention in natural selection? In moving from this part, I just mentioned this because I found it really interesting. I feel I still have some minutes left. I'm not an economist, but I found this book written by economists really interesting and kind of with practical proposals of changing the shifting economic paradigm in a way that could help more the environment. And I feel it's very in line with bioethics and human rights, sustainable development goals. And I think it's also in line with your perspective. I'd like to know a bit more. She proposes a donut, literally a donut, this element, with a social foundation and an ecological ceiling. What is in between the donut itself would be the safe and just space for humanity. And the way for that is to achieve that is a regenerative and distributed economy. When you have a shortfall of social foundation or overshoot of ecological problems, we are not in the safe space for humanity. So here she uses the 15 Sustainable Development Goals to make the inner part in these boundaries, the planetary boundaries proposed by International Group of System Scientists. So yes, and she found a way of measuring it. Not all of these have measuring, then you can read better in the references of the paper, what she's using to measure where we are in danger and where we don't have a way of counting it still, or agreed in what's going to be the right measurement. So I found it interesting in line with bioethics in a concrete proposal of a better way, or a creative response on how should we balance these technologies and use them in a better way. Okay, here's more information that's in the book. She's proposing the paradigm shift, so forgetting an economy that's only growing to an economy, the donut economy. And yes, forgetting the idea that growth will clean up the mess again to a regenerative by design. We'll leave it here. Thank you.
So Anil can come up here, sit up there, and then we have the two online speakers. Right. Okay, chair. So first of all, I think thank you for all these very wonderful presentations. A lot of questions have been raised. I think the first stage of this would be maybe among the speakers, maybe can you talk to each other and we answer some of the questions? Maybe Ellen, can you respond to? Actually, we don't need them because everyone is seeing them. Or do we need them? Or they want to see them?
I'm going to change it, but I was just fixing them.
All right, so
sorry, Father Joseph, can you speak a little bit louder? I have trouble hearing you.
Yeah, that's a problem here in this room. So can you can respond to Ray Payne, some of his questions, and maybe also Anil can respond to Lillian, some of her concerns. And then after that, we can open up to the general public about any further questions. We have originally an hour and 15 minutes, but we are running out of time. So we'll try to adapt, maybe cut short the break and the lunch period and to squeeze in more conversation time. So maybe Ellen, do you have any response to
Okay. Actually, I basically agree with Ray Ping's presentation. He talked about some fundamental difference between Buddhism and Confucianism in terms of their attitude towards animals. And because Confucian ethics is basically focused on human relationships. I'm not going to using anthropocentric position of Confucianism, but in comparison with Buddhism, animal, would not be the primary concern, at least not, in terms of like protection, in terms of, non-harm, in a sense, so you see that that's a huge difference. But he using, of course, there's the question is how do we protect or respect animals? And Ray Ping used examples of one of his neighbors, in Hong Kong, and practicing so-called releasing animals, and then have some kind of resentment towards people, even former friends who didn't follow the same kind of in her eyes, so-called moral actions. I think from Buddhist view, actually, theoretically speaking, one should be more tolerant with people with different attitude. And also, I should say, I don't think a Buddhist view about animal protection should be treated dogmatically. I think Master Sakya, mentioned that. I think I completely agree with him. It's kind of a moral guide, but it's really determined on the context. in Buddhism, the biggest problem is that people tend to take single one teachings out and treat it dogmatically without really giving the specific context. I think that's also the problem with some kind of Chinese Buddhist practice, even throughout history. I also mentioned that in my paper, because people are looking for some kind of good karma per se, and they're doing something. A lot of kinds of popularized notion of Buddhism, but which is, I think, in counter to the Buddhist teaching, from the scripture. I'm kind of very interested in Lillian and the last speaker's question. And the question addressed to another person, but I'm very interested in her questions because I think she's a bioethics, raised really good questions about Buddhist view toward like genome editing, and like genetic modification of animals. And also, from my reading of Buddhism, I think it also depends on the situations. And it's hard to just give like a single principle, say either say yes or say no. I think it really depends on the situation. But it's very interesting about the genetic modification of mosquitoes. Okay, and now I'm just responding from my personal view. I think that would be a great idea if we can modify some kind of modification, genetic modification for mosquitoes, so they are not going to bite people and to spread disease. I would love that. I really absolutely hate mosquitoes. Anyway, so that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you. Emil, do you have any?
Yes. Thank you, Lillian, for the great response. I just go straight forward to the different 5, 6, 7 questions. Very short answers, I will. Okay, about interconnectedness. In Buddhism, talking about the dependent origination, everything is connected to each other. So Lillian's question is that whether it only applies to the human or it applies to the other sensual being as well. Well, it actually applies to all kinds of life form, okay? But unfortunately, humans are the worst and very capable of damaging worse than the natural sort of a capacity. That's why it's a matter of our human being. Because if there is a lot, let's say that there's a lot of dogs, inbreeded and a lot of dogs, but by the nature itself, they don't have that technology to make that they will kind of take over this planet by the dog planet and then throw the old man out. The nature will able to handle it. But the way, because we are the one who have a destructive power, we are not only constructive power. We create, I don't know, with our very, very smart, our brain, why we are creating this destructive nuclear, I don't know. But if it's a nuclear for the constructive, I wouldn't say anything, but we are trying to use it destructive. So it is interconnected in that sense. It is not about have to be responsible for all the sensual beings, but all the sensual beings doesn't have that power like humans. So that's why we are addressing to the human. We have to be responsible. Second one, tree important. Then if it is a tree is so important, what about the choice between your son and the tree? This is not about a choice. This is about if there is no tree, where do you get oxygen from? Where do you get oxygen from? Tree is a part of you. So it is not only about the you between the tree, but it is about how do you manage, balance about that. It is not about a choice. Because if there is no tree, then where do you get oxygen to breathe? There is no oxygen to breathe. So it is about the balancing those things. So it doesn't matter if you have to cut it down in order to create this building, fine, but you have to be responsible and create something out. And that's how I think in the Western world, when you build some building, you have to make sure that there's enough parking, there's enough garden, and not like in the East, because we have a lot of forests, I guess. So that's why they don't hardly care about these things. It's only the recent kind of movement the government is forcing at the moment, but it's still not active like in the West. So this is another. Thus, when I was in a few days ago, I was presiding over one of the ceremony of a tree ordination ceremony. And in that ceremony, I noticed that all the villagers at that ceremony, they read out and loudly a vow to the forest god imagination, okay? The forest god said that we will take care of this forest, as their own life. So this is a part of a ritual, it can be seen, but as a part of educating to the future generations how important the tree is, okay? The third is about reborn. Reborn is a very, very complicated rebirth. Reborn is a very complicated issue in Buddhism. Generally, rebirth and reborn, this idea is also in the Jain, also in the Hinduism, so all mixed up here. From Buddhist point of view, the whole idea of rebirth is not as we're thinking that to this life we are dog, we are human, and next life will be dog and cat or whatever. Not in that sense. Rebirth is that every tiny seconds through your eyes, nose, mouth, ear, and senses of our body. So everything is always, rising and going, rising and dying, rising and dying. With my voice, you are making some sense of cognizing something, and that is one bird already. And then you change the switch to someone, it's the next bird. So in the whole idea of a rebirth in Theravada Buddhism is a continuum. It's a kind of a life flow. It's just like a neon. It's just atom, proton, whatever it is, running so fast, and we just see as a light, stable light. But in fact, it is a birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. This is a Theravada way of a very very textual explanation, and we still teach in that way. But the folk level, in the village level, they used to take in that way. But we always correcting that idea. So that's why you can do something for your better good. Instead, you can do whatever at now, not for the after die. Heaven and hell in Buddhism, it's not a Buddhist idea. It is a Brahmanic idea. Got into the Buddhism. In the Pali text society, in the Pali text canon, in the Pali canon, we don't have the idea of heaven and hell as we understand. Heaven and hell is what we create from human mind. Because heaven means that it's an adjective, it's a good. Because for good means that, for example, if it's a gentleman go to the heaven in Thai or in the Asian idea is that why they go to the heaven? Because you can have a lot of wives. But whereas what about these girls? Go to the heaven. What will they get? Not many husbands. They say that it will be so beautiful. You will have a so good ornament. You see, this is all the human creations you want to create. So that's why that this is not there, reborn. So this whole idea of a compassion from Buddhist idea is that because you are living in a society with others, and it is normal to have a passion for your own safe and own sake. But Buddha says that be aware, we are living with others. So you have to have a common passion. So not a self-passion. That is a compassion from Buddhist point of view. Nibbana is another sense, is that Nibbana is another heaven. Nibbana is not another world. Nibbana means that extinguishing. Is extinguishing what? Extinguishing all the guilt, all the mental defilements here and now. It is about your greed, your anger, your hatred, and all those things. If you can just drop it down, that is nirvana. You can be nirvana here, right here at the moment. So it is not about going to heaven. Once you go to nibbana, this world will be empty. No, you are still in the world, but your mind is very peace and become an ecological person. That is the whole idea of nirvana. Biological needs and what is going on. How do you define? How do you standard necessary and necessary? It is very easy. It's about whether it is a creative and sustainable for yourself and others and the whole planet. So it is a sustainable for yourself, the planet, and the society. That is, we say necessary. But if it's not, no, you have to be a little bit distant. About cultural meat, because it is a great gift of technology, and it's not creating any negative byproduct to the world or the society. As long as it's not creating something wrong to the society as a whole, Buddhism said that technology, go ahead, we will follow you. Then I do not have a problem. For example, when in the first we have a contraception in the few 20 years, 30 years ago, in many religious faith group doesn't accept that. But in Buddhism, fine, because it has nothing to do with you haven't initiated with the killing of your life. It is even prior to that, it is your intentions. It's fine to use a contraception in Buddhist country. So it was very successful when it was first introduced in Thailand. You see, this is a way how we think. So cultural meat, actually in Chulalongkorn, this is a host of this university, we have already able to come out with that. We have a cultural feast and then we have a cultural meat, and we have been eating already. So we don't have a problem with that. If as long as there is no scientific result that is harming you, harming the world, harming the earth, harming the society, then we'll say that, okay, that's the beauty of technology. Go ahead, enjoy it. And then animal research, fine. Animal research is in Buddhist perspective. If you want to kill someone, some animal, it's fine, but with a very cautious accountability. So most of the doctors or the medical student here, what they do is that after they did it, they will do the merit making. They will consider if they are the great master. They see that they are thankful, grateful for their life to teach them a lesson so they can use that their life to a more beneficial way. So this is how we have ritual of gratefulness, showing the gratefulness for those animals. We are not killing because of we want to kill, but with the intention that as a teaching tools, as a thing. Mutilation, again, we'll go to the same thing. As long as it doesn't create the harm to the society, to the planet, we'll accept it. But if it is creating to the self, society, and planet, we will really, we won't agree with that. Because otherwise, if you are mutilating a lot of things, then you will have a Frankenstein and more, and it will be a danger for us, yes. So if there's, as long as you are not creating any Frankenstein, I guess that Buddhism says that go, no problem. I think that's what I covered all the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we can open up to the floor. Once again, questions. Okay, Chris, David, Sumati.
Oh, good.
And then Sona.
Very active.
Okay, Chris.
Father Tam, am I part of the floor? I'm in cyberspace.
Okay, okay, I'll put you on the name, on the list, okay.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I've just one question asked about the so-called minimal list of human rights. Now, if you look at the minimal list, you find, for example, the first is the right to life. Now, I don't find that very minimal because it all depends on what you include in it. If I were to ask you, for example, whether you include the unborn, or you only include people who are born. And what about the respect for life? Human life, the unborn, is also human life. And how would Buddhism sort of respond to that? That's my first question. The second question is to Soraj Honadarum. I don't know whether I pronounced your name correctly. Is it okay?
Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
My name is Lilian.
Oh, yeah, but I saw that it's a different name there. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. It's I misled by the screen. I think that in your all the topics, very vast topics, a whole list of topics. I'm just wondering whether you have included directly the so-called transhumanism aspect, or whether you have deliberately confined it to farmed animals and plants and so on, rather than to the bio enhancement aspect, and whether or not you can interfere, for example, with the germ line as distinct in some other ways. Thank you very much.
Yes, about the unborn, I guess that from Buddhist point of view, it is not existed here, and we are not related. We can't do anything about that. As long as someone is born and you, by the natural law, you have a human rights, same as you have animal rights, same as you have a natural right, the tree's right. So as long as there is existed and we are there, we have to treat each species, each kind of life with a respect and honor and kind of with a mutual understanding, mutual living. That is what it is all about. That is what you call a middle way.
Thank you, Sean. You're right.
Dennis.
Dennis. Yes, sorry.
Yes.
I actually love the topic of transhumanism. I'm doing the PhD touching this topic and global governance of human genetically related. I didn't brought it up in my talk today for time limitations and trying to narrow a bit the topics, only food, animals, and environment, as it's treated in the Novel Council Bioethics Horizon scanning. So I'm very interested in this topic. I think it's very important, We are part of nature, and we are also considering changing our biology in some ways. For purpose of enhancement, I think we change ourselves in a lot of ways in medicine since a long time ago. And I don't see a problem with that. The field of enhancement is a whole other issue, and I think was just outside the time I have to respond to the Buddhist perspective. So thank you for your question, but I couldn't speak of it here.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. So I really liked all the presentations. This is my question will be posed to both of the main speakers, Ellen and Neil. I love the making the plastic bottles into robes and the ordination of trees. I've read about your ordination of trees in the past and teach my students that actually. For both of you, and I love the idea of a character-based consequentialism, Ellen. I think that's I like both of those terms. In terms of thinking about causation, intentionality, and not just taking actions to remedy harms, like turning plastic bottles into robes. Lillian brought up the economy, and I'm glad she did. I touched on commodification in my own presentation. To what extent, from a Buddhist point of view, ought especially the lay Buddhist and maybe even non-Buddhists be engaging in practices to alter the nature of our economy and to alter things like preventing the production of a plastic bottle in the first place so that the waste isn't there? To what extent is that, it's not a duty-based ethical system, but to what extent could that be the offering instead of bringing plastic bottles, right? And to what extent does that, does a character-based consequentialism and a care ethic, as Ellen was speaking about, play into altering our economy, right? And that means, maybe not engaging in purchasing, but also not investing in the production of certain things. So I would like to hear that, and I'll just end on this. I'm a big fan of the Buddhist economist Schumacher and the Schumacher Institute in the Northeast, in the Berkshires, which is not too far from New York City. So I don't know if either one of you are familiar with him, but it's about living small, living more localized, preventing economic globalization and its devastating practices to forests and things like that. How do the care ethic and these other things that you guys were both speaking about? And I had skillful means in my mind, but I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you for a very interesting question. Actually, Buddhism leave it up to you. It's about the Buddhism is DIY religion, do it yourself. So we try to not impose on others. We try to do as a model, try to do it as a practice of our life, our way of living. But if you find that it is interesting, it is helpful, then of course you are welcome to follow me or follow what I do. But I won't go and impose on somebody else. But to start with that, the first safety first, instead of having there, this is how we're talking about the consequences. But if you can stop before the consequences, if you can stop to have a, stop preventing this, the plastic bottle. That's why I'm not using plastic bottle. You have seen that for the 12 days. You see, I never use it, the hotel facility. But I'm not saying that. I'm not blaming that. Why we are using it? That is my choice. So that is one of the freedom Buddhism gives. So as a Buddhist practitioner, you will live a life with what you think, which is more grateful and beneficial for yourself and society and nature. But we won't go and impose on somebody else. It depends on you.
Thank you.
David.
Okay, thank you all for the interesting session. One thing which came in almost all the 4 talks and throughout the conference actually is the value of life. And I want to raise the difficult question, what makes life that valuable? Why is life valuable? Because only once we know what's the basis or what makes life valuable, do we know to whom to ascribe it. What's the range of entities, living entities, who have the right to life or whose value should they respect? Now, I know some of the answers in the Western tradition. Some say we are all born in the image of God. That's a religious. Philosophical, non-religious answer is that we are the only entities in the world, living entities, who have a sense of their own mortality, and we are afraid of, and death is a basic experience throughout our lives, while other living animals do not have it. We could say that, yes, we have consciousness, yes, we have projects, we have life plans, so if we die, these are cut, and that's the tragedy of death, while a cow doesn't have a life plan, a prospect for the future. So these are kinds of answers that are made in order to justify the value of life. Now, I'm very curious to hear how both Buddhists and Confucians as well, who have that, as we heard this morning, makes distinction between the less egalitarian, let's say, in the ascription of the value of life to the animal world. How do you answer that question?
Very easy. Because from Buddha's point of view, we say that when we are born, even an animal and a human, there's a basic birthright is that everyone wants to be happy and well-being. Everyone doesn't want to die. That is a birthright. Once we have a breathing, once we cognize that by any creatures, any animals, any plants, they tend to have this right that they want to live and they want to live happy. So in that sense, that is a value, I would say, from the Buddhist point of view. Everyone that got that value because of this birthright. So
it's flowers too?
Yes, of course. That's why if you really love flower, you should not hug it and put it in your room, but nourish it there, because the flower itself is a combination of the sun, the soil, the air. There's so many things there. It is a part of you. So enjoy the flower as it is, as its nature. Not be selfish and take the flower and put it in your rest and sit next to your working place. So that you can do, but that's not the right way to do that, because you are really not respecting the life of this flower as well. Flower is also kind of life. Plants are one that is called one faculty life, because as we have other 5 faculties, we have all this consciousness. It doesn't have a consciousness, but it has a life. See, even you should give that right of life to those planets as well. But it doesn't mean that you have to be so strict. But if you have to take it, but you have to be accountable for that. You have to be responsible for that. So the whole idea of value, it is not like a commercial, it is not like a kind of a capitalistic idea, but it is like a value in a way that it is our every single being or every single creators or single plants which come into the world. We see that it has a right to live and right to live happily. It's the same as you have that and you want that, and it applies to every beings and every kind of spirit. So if you want to, for your own sake, if you are offense and violate that right to others, we will say that is a demerit. That is another good question.
Okay, thank you.
As raping, do you have an answer to the question? Confucian response to that question about life?
Father,
what questions you have for me, Father Joseph?
One question. He's asking what is the
Yes.
question?
I don't understand the question. What questions you have for me?
The
David,
question in
you should use the other
potential
mic.
is what makes life, especially of non-human entities or animals, valuable? I know
Oh,
it means these, but for other non-human entities.
in Confucian belief, heaven created all kinds of beings. Among all these beings, human beings are the most valuable beings. That's the answer in the classics. So I guess, all the Confucian people just taking it for granted, then they never really reflect on that question to find more reasons to offer the answer. So I guess roughly that's it. And it's in the classic, it has said, all beings have been created by heaven and together with earth, cooperation. That among all these myriad of beings and things, human beings are most noble or valuable. And so we should love every human being. And although we should love them in differentiation, we should even love all myriad things because all created by heaven, but in a hierarchical structure with quite different principles and rituals created. So anyway, if you ask me to answer this question from a Confucian tradition, I guess that's the most basic thing. Then of course we can try to create more concepts, philosophical arguments to try to show why human beings are valuable. But the basic thing is heaven created all things. Human beings have been created as the most noble, most valuable. That's just like a religion's belief on the Confucian side, I guess. Did I answer your question, sir, or not?
More or less.
More or less. Okay.
Can I add something?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and for David's question, I know now a lot of Buddhist scholars accept the idea about so-called dignity or the language of rights, either human rights or animal rights. But I don't think such kind of concepts existed within Buddhism itself. Even though, that being said, I think there might be some kind of implication of human, either not just human, the dignity or the value of all sentient being, because at least in Mahayana tradition, we have a saying that all sentient being, everything got the Buddha nature, which suggests this notion of kind of dignity there. But as for rights, I still am not sure it goes very well with Buddhist philosophy or not, particularly the notion of animal rights, because animal rights kind of is extended talk coming from human rights, and there's still kind of suggestions here about. I'm not sure if they talk about the separation of a human or animal, but still a kind of thing which, personally, as a Buddhist scholar, I feel a little bit weird talk about animal rights in Buddhism, despite that Buddhists talk a lot about respect animals, talk about a holistic thing between humans and animals, but for me, it's very difficult to argue from the perspective of animal rights. But that's just my personal view.
Thank you.
You want to say something? Yeah.
Yes, animal right didn't have such a word, but implied by all the practice and all the teachings. When you are using the word idea of dependent originations, it is already saying that every single artifact, every single thing, every single being has its own space and place. So that is already there. So it means that even a dog or cat, they have a right of living. Why otherwise why we are feeding the dog and why we are feeding this cat? This way we love it. We have become part of us. And then when we have become part of us, we have to respect their own life as well. We are not having this pet just for our own pleasure, but we just have to look after them as well as a part of your responsibility. That I would say that the animal rights. Again, if you are talking about the 5 precepts, in the 3rd precept, there's a very interesting is the 3rd precept. Is a Kamesh Michachara, which is about generally it is translated as a misbehavior in sexual behavior. I think that was etymologically a wrong translation because Kamesu, by the word etymology, by grammatically in Pali, it means that it's a sensual pleasure. You see, so you should not violate you should not violate anything for your own sensual pleasure. So for your beauty of your eyes, you shouldn't offend, you shouldn't violate someone's nice garden or someone's nice pictures because you don't just like it. Or with the words, with the smell, all these 5 senses. So it's a violating. That is a word in Buddhism. It's a violating, taking your 5 senses as more egocentric and then trying to destroy whatever it is not on your favor. That is a violating of the human rights. That is a word of human rights. In United Nations, it was only 1940. It came the word human rights. But I would say that that idea is already germinated in Buddhist idea, the 3rd precept. You should not violate any beings, anything for your own sake of your 5 senses. It's a sensual pleasure. And that is applied to the human right as well as the planet rights.
Very interesting. Somebody?
Yeah. Actually, I do not declare myself to defend for Buddhism, but I would like to share something as I understand from the side of Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism. First of all, I would like to thank Lillian. Your questions are very, very thoughtful, and I would like to speak something because of you. In my understanding, Buddhism in the original sense, we call it Buddha Dharma. Buddha Dharma is not religion. So anybody here can be a Buddhist, while you can have your own religion. Yeah. At the same time, you can be a Buddhist. The next point I would like to say, when a Buddhist or anybody say a sentence that we are part of nature, I think this sentence is quite unintelligible for me as Buddhist or in Buddhism. If you are a real Buddhist, it is unintelligible. Why? Why? Because there is only nature. Only nature, material and immaterial. Material, for example, the 5 planet matter elements. Because you are so scientific, I try to respond to you in a scientific way. These realities are ultimate, but when they interlock material and immaterial realities, after interlocking, it will appear what we call we. So we, at that very moment, we happen. That is called birth. So a birth means an appearance of mental becoming in the original sense, not birth from mother, father, not like that. A birth is an appearance of mental becoming or a new self, a new life form, a new emotional agent. And in every day, we can be born several times, not just time. We can be born at any time in the ultimate sense of Buddhism, in my understanding. So in this sense, self cannot be an intrinsic, in my understanding, cannot be intrinsic, self in Buddhism, but can be relational or conventional. Self is very different from life. Life is real, but self is convention. So I do not know that by my explanation, you can help you understand more about rebirth or not. But the necessary is that if we understand it, we know how should we live? We can live only momentarily in the ultimate sense. We can live only in the present, not in the future. And the future doesn't mean the next life. 5 minutes later is future. Everything is flow of existence. This is what I would like to add to Lillian. Okay. And another point, Alan. I read your paper, is beautifully written, especially when you talk about animal rights. You say that in Mahayana tradition, everybody possesses Buddha Dharma. I like that. I also believe this, but it doesn't mean that every life, or in the case of animal, can attain enlightenment. If a person takes a vow of to be a compassionate Buddha, according to Theravada tradition I belong to, but not yet achieved, we will call him or her a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is the person who takes a vow to be a compassionate Buddha, but not yet achieved that state. In his birth cycle, which are so many countless birth cycles, he or she can be born animal, can be born anything in 21 ranks of beings, 21 life forms. But, sorry, not but. So we can see in Buddhist literature, there are so many animal bodhisattvas, but there is no animal Buddha. No animal Buddha. A bodhisattva who is near to enlightenment will be born human being only. According to Theravada belief, will be born human being only in the last life and enlightened in the human form. What this phenomenon signify? It is telling us that human being is to be born human being is very important. It's very important. Theravada tradition explained this, that because human beings is potential. This being is potential and neutral. So we can move ourselves to the destructive, down in a destructive way, or up to the positive way, up to us. So we choose our life. But while we choose our life, human beings must be always responsible. So in this life form, this is the uniqueness of this life form. So I do not ask question, but for me, I think that still in Buddhism, human beings is the most important life form. And more or less, it is a man's, I should not say, I do not know English word. You can help me. Man-centered or human-centered. And anthropocentric, actually, I do not want to use this term because human-centric, okay, human-centric, but anthropocentric, it can mean we use anything else to be means for to achieve our ends, and that in case it's unnecessary for the Buddhist tradition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, somebody. Are there any response? I mean, just comment. You want to respond to that, or go to the next?
The next question.
Next question. Okay, Sora.
Sorry, I be brief. I have only 2 points. First one is an anecdote I want to share with you. Listening to other news talk. Chulalongkorn is a big university and it has a well-known faculty of veterinary medicine. And they have an annual practice because they do animal research all the time and they kill, I don't know how many rats, mice, rabbits, whatnot, for their research and study in frogs and other animals. And each year, and this is true, this is like, documented. Each year, they invite Buddhist monks to their faculty, and the monks perform ceremonies. The monks chant, and faculty members, students sit and listen to the chants, and they give things to the monks, and they dedicate their merits arising from the ceremony to those animals. So, they are Buddhists, and they know that what they are doing, they feel something, they feel uncomfortable doing all this. But as veterinary scientists, they have to do all this. So that kind of reflects what Buddhists have been thinking about or have experienced for as long as there's a need to do animal research. And the second point is, I cannot prevent myself from answering David's question. What makes life valuable? And Buddhists are arguing among themselves as much, I think, as people in any other religions. And my take on this is that it depends ultimately on us human beings, because without life, plants life, animal life, fungal life, all kind of life, the whole biosphere, we depend, this is a scientific fact, right? We depend on the biosphere. And as such, the whole biosphere, life itself, is valuable. I think most Buddhists would agree with me on that. And one last point related to this one. What about killing all the mosquitoes? We raised this point yesterday at the public discussion. For example, if we can genetically re-engineer mosquitoes so that they don't reproduce, they all die off, would that be a good thing? Thailand is a tropical country, and people suffer a lot from, mosquito-borne diseases, malaria, dengue fever, big problems, and other serious diseases. So, on the one hand, it could be a good thing, but we never know what would happen, and this, is something quite scary. We never know what would happen to the ecology if the mosquitoes suddenly disappear or disappear in a short time. We can do something, and this is all okay to prevent ourselves from being bitten by mosquitoes. Most hotels in Bangkok are doing this. That's why I think you don't suffer from mosquito bites even though the river is right there. Mosquitoes, they live in water. That's okay. But to, if possible, to destroy all species of one organism, there are consequences that there are so many factors that we cannot predict.
Thank you. Lucita, you have a question?
Okay, it's particularly for fire. I just wanted to ask if there were no lay people for you to ask to deal with your insect infestations, what would you do?
Simple. Live with it. That is adaptations. You have to adapt yourself. Or you try to go and somewhere very safe for you.
Yeah, so you find a way of repelling them,
yes,
or something like that.
Yes.
That's because I've had situations with cockroaches in my house, ants taking over my kitchen in Qatar, and I've had to find ways of. I do try to repel them.
Yeah.
Obviously, in Islam as well, you try to minimize the harm and do what is only necessary. So, but in certain cases, your life might be in conflict with the animal's life. Something might be attacking you, like a snake coming to bite you. In that situation, what would you do?
I do very loving kindness meditation. That is a true story. Once I was in the forest, and when I was just a young novice at the time, because the battery is so worthy, I don't have I don't have much battery, so I'm trying to save my torch as much as I could. So in the nighttime, if the road is in the forest, if the familiar path, the forest path is so familiar, I try to switch off my light in the night and just walk in the blind like that. But on one occasion, when I was walking there, and suddenly, I don't know, I just stopped it. I don't know what happened. So when I switch on my torch, then I saw the cobra just 1 feet away from my feet. And what should I do? I just sit there, because if I panic, it will. I noticed that it is in reach to bite me all the time. So I just sit there and then make a friendly wish. How are you, Cobra? So sorry to disturb you. So this is my way. So can you just let me pass through? I'm not harming you. I just talk in my mind. So there is a chanting actually. There is some chanting. So I just chanted that in my mind, and then I just switch off. I was just standing there. And then switch off my light, and then just for a few minutes, so I just switch on. The cobra is already gone in the side there. I just walk, and then I just say, okay, goodbye.
That was a Buddhist cobra. That's sure.
A snake in Venezuela, and my reaction was so different.
Okay, Chris, and then Margaret.
I don't mean to go into the break. The question that you just asked, I had notes on, and I had notes on from yesterday when David, or the other day, when David was mentioning that the sabbatical year for the land, and Muslims would come for Orthodox Jews and grow the food for them. So I wanted to raise this issue, but I wanted to ask my Schumacher economics question more earlier. But I posed the question to. We just heard your answer, but this becomes a major issue with environmentalism, because if we can push off the responsibility and reap the rewards of someone else's actions, right? To what extent are we still culpable, right, in the chain of causation when we do that? And I think the chain of causation here, we are still engaging in that action, right? It's a secondary, possibly, or in either one of these cases, it's not even indirect. It's just secondary. It's second order participation in the action. So to me,
group karma.
All right.
Yeah. Karma.
So I would say that the Buddhist who gets the leg to kill the termites, right, still accrues negative karma, right? Okay, good, right? And good, I'm glad to hear a monk say that because I teach my students that when I teach Buddhism. And I would say that the Orthodox Jew who gets a Muslim to come and plant the food, right, is still morally culpable. And God will not be happy later on. He will say, you have violated my law. I didn't create Muslims for you in the beginning.
My point was precisely answering this. So I was struck by the notion of asking somebody else because in Jewish law, Jewish tradition, there is a distinction between two types of things that you're not allowed to do. There are 7 things that all humans are not allowed to do, such as murder. But the rest, 613 minus the 7, are only applicable to Jewish people. So it's not a problem. If you're not allowed to do something on the Sabbath, it's not a moral problem to ask a non-Jew to do it because that specific religious imperative doesn't apply to a non-Jew. These imperatives were designed only for the Jewish people. Now, are these 7 things inherently moral, the ones that are applicable to all humans? I think yes. Rabbi Crane can shed more light on this. But many of those imperatives that are only for Jews are also moral. So it's a very unique Jewish approach that it's really okay. It's not that you're using the Muslim. But when it comes to the environment, it's just very interesting. If we can have this approach, we can roll over responsibility, as Chris says, and that's a huge issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. And I'm glad you ended on that point, because that is my main point. I grew up amongst Jews. My neighbors growing up were Orthodox Jews. They would forget the oven on. Then it would be the Sabbath, right? They would come and we'd see them outside. I turned their oven off so many times, or brought them things. We cook food, right, and then bring it to them because they were like, oh, we really, someone's visiting us and we really want a big thing, but we can't do it, oops, sorry. So I know, right? And when it comes to, turning off your oven, that's one thing. But, and I've had discussions with Jews about this, that, well, when these laws were given, right, and in the ancient context, you didn't live next door to a Greek family, right? Everyone was Jewish. So the whole point of the leaving the land was let the land regenerate itself. And environmentally, right? If you just you stay off the land, but then Muslims come and cultivate the land, it doesn't give the land its Sabbath, right? And that's why I bring it up. And it was an interesting parallel. I loved your answer. So I really wanted to highlight that. I'm glad you brought this up.
What we do is that in every day and every night, when we do the chanting, evening chanting, and that's how we try to kind of confess ourselves that is anything which we violate the nature, the animal rights and whatever, with intentional intentions, please forgive us, and we will really grateful for making our life more, pleasurable with your sacrifice, whatever it is. So that's why we will say that we will spread about the merit to all these unvisible, unvisible, when we accept the accountability of what we did, even with intention or without intention.
That's interesting because you're chanting to nature and you're asking forgiveness from nature.
No. We are not asking forgiveness. We are asking not forgiveness. We are asking that we are grateful for those things, and then maybe thinking of that how we respect or how we take care of this nature in a more sustainable way. Yeah.
Okay, I think we break. The next session is Jewish, so we can also this discussion. We're going to cut short the break. So we start at 11.
You need it.
50.
You need it.
Okay, 11:50. So we have 20 minutes of break. I think that's fine. Okay.